Dr. Nathaniel Brooks adjusted his expensive watch as he reviewed the day's patient list at Brooks Memorial Hospital. At 28, he was already one of the city's most successful physicians, heir to the Brooks Hospital network, and recently single after ending his 4-year relationship with Rebecca, a supermodel whose beauty couldn't mask her shallow nature. "Dr. Brooks," Nurse Patricia whispered urgently, approaching his desk. "That girl is here again." Nathaniel looked up from his charts. "Which girl?" "Maggie Grimes. She's been coming to our free medication program almost daily for the past month. Always has some new complaint, headaches, stomach pain, fatigue, gets her prescription and leaves immediately." Nathaniel frowned. The Brooks Memorial Free Medication Program was designed to help genuinely needy patients who couldn't afford essential medicines. If someone was abusing the system, "What's suspicious about someone needing medical care?" he asked. Nurse Patricia leaned closer. "She never follows up on treatment recommendations. Never asks questions about her conditions. Just takes the pills and runs. I think she's either selling them on the street or she's addicted." Through the waiting room window, Nathaniel could see her, a young woman, maybe 24, with tired eyes and worn clothes. She sat rigidly in the plastic chair, clutching a small purse, constantly checking the clock. If she's compromising care for patients who genuinely need help. Nathaniel stood up, his jaw tightening. "I'll handle this personally." But when he called her name, Maggie Grimes had already collected her prescription and was walking quickly toward the exit. Something about her urgency nagged at him, the way she moved, not with the erratic energy of an addict, but with the focused determination of someone carrying a heavy burden. Against his better judgment, Dr. Nathaniel Brooks decided to follow his patient home. 20 minutes later, Nathaniel's BMW crept slowly through a neighborhood he had never seen, despite living in the same city his entire life. Broken streetlights, cracked sidewalks, houses with peeling paint and bars on windows. His luxury car felt obscenely out of place. Maggie walked quickly, her worn sneakers silent on the pavement, the small pharmacy bag clutched tightly in her hand. She turned into an alley between two rundown buildings, and Nathaniel parked at the corner, continuing on foot. He watched as she climbed the narrow stairs to a second-floor apartment, keys jingling as she unlocked multiple deadbolts. Through the thin walls, he could hear her voice, soft and gentle. "I'm home, Lucy. I got your medicine." A weak voice responded, "Did it hurt today, Maggie? Getting the pills?" "No, baby. Don't worry about that. How are you feeling?" Nathaniel moved closer to the window, guilt warring with curiosity. What he saw through the gap in the faded curtains made his breath catch. The apartment was tiny, barely larger than his walk-in closet. A teenage girl, maybe 17, lay in a narrow bed that dominated the main room. She was pale and thin, with the same green eyes as Maggie, but without the exhaustion that seemed to weigh on her older sister. Maggie sat on the edge of the bed, carefully counting out pills into a small container. 2 in the morning, 1 at lunch, 2 at dinner. "Mrs. Steve will remind you while I'm at work." "How many jobs today?" the girl asked weakly. "Just 2. The restaurant and then cleaning offices tonight, but tomorrow I have 3. The restaurant, office cleaning, and weekend shift at the grocery store." Nathaniel felt something cold settle in his stomach as the pieces fell into place. The medications she collected weren't for her. They were for her sick sister. And she was working multiple jobs to afford the medicines their free program couldn't cover. The apartment door across the hall opened, and an elderly woman emerged with 3 cats trailing behind her. "Good evening, Mrs. Steve," Maggie called out, immediately brightening her voice to hide her exhaustion. "How did Lucy do today?" "She's a good girl, just like you taught her. Took her medicine, ate the soup I made. Don't you worry about a thing." The older woman studied Maggie's face with maternal concern. "You look tired, honey. When's the last time you ate something?" "I'm fine, I grabbed something at work." Mrs. Steve didn't look convinced. "I made extra stew. Take some home." "You don't have to—" "Nonsense. You take care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once." Nathaniel watched as Mrs. Steve returned with a container of food and a small bag of cat food. Maggie accepted both gratefully, pressing a few crumpled dollar bills into the older woman's hand. "For watching Lucy today," Maggie insisted when Mrs. Steve tried to refuse. "Child, you don't need to pay me for caring about your sister. It's not payment, it's cat food money for the extra trouble." After Mrs. Steve returned to her apartment, Nathaniel saw Maggie slump against her door, the bright facade dropping to reveal exhaustion so profound it made his chest ache. She was 24 years old and looked like she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Because she did. Nathaniel made his way back to his car, his mind racing. Everything he had assumed about Maggie Grimes was wrong. She wasn't a drug dealer or an addict. She was a young woman sacrificing everything to care for her sick sister, working multiple jobs and swallowing her pride to collect free medications because she had no other choice. He thought about his own life at 24. Fresh out of medical school, dating models, attending charity galas, worrying about which expensive restaurant to try next. While he was choosing between luxury cars, Maggie Grimes was choosing between food and medicine. The contrast made him feel ashamed and strangely empty. The next morning, Nathaniel couldn't concentrate on his patient consultations. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that tiny apartment, the sick teenager in the narrow bed, and Maggie's exhausted face as she counted out pills with steady hands. When Maggie appeared in the waiting room for her daily visit, Nathaniel made a decision. "Ms. Grimes," he called her name personally this time, watching a surprise flickered across her tired features. "Could I speak with you privately?" She followed him into his office, perching nervously on the edge of the chair, across from his mahogany desk. The contrast between them had never felt more stark. Him in his expensive suit behind the imposing desk, her in second-hand clothes that had been washed so many times the colors had faded. "I wanted to discuss your recent visits," Nathaniel began carefully. Maggie's back straightened defensively. "Is there a problem? I haven't done anything wrong. I only take what's prescribed, and I really do have those symptoms." "I know," Nathaniel interrupted gently. "I know about Lucy." The color drained from Maggie's face. "I don't know what you mean." "Your sister. She's 17, chronically ill, and you're caring for her alone." Maggie stood abruptly, panic flashing in her eyes. "Are you going to report me? Take away the medication assistance? I know I bend the truth sometimes about my symptoms, but Lucy needs those medicines and we can't afford—" "Sit down, Maggie." Something in his tone made her obey, though she remained poised to flee. "I'm not going to report you. I want to offer you a job." Maggie stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. "A job?" "As my personal assistant. You'd schedule appointments, handle phone calls, basic administrative work. Nothing that requires formal medical training, but I've observed you. You're intelligent, organized, and clearly capable of managing complex situations." "I don't have a college degree. I never even finished high school." "You've been running a household and caring for a chronically ill person while working multiple jobs. That's more qualification than half the people I interview." Maggie was silent for a long moment, and Nathaniel could see her trying to process the offer, looking for the catch. "Why?" she asked finally. "Because you shouldn't have to pretend to be sick to get medicine for your sister, and because—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound condescending. "Because I think we could help each other." "What's the salary?" Nathaniel named a figure that was 3 times what she probably made from all her jobs combined. Maggie's eyes widened. "That's too much for answering phones. It's fair compensation for someone I can trust. And there's one more thing. Lucy could receive her treatments here at the hospital. Full care, no questions asked, no charges." That's when Maggie broke. Tears she had been holding back for months spilled over, and she covered her face with her hands. "I'm sorry. I don't usually... "You don't have to explain," Nathaniel said softly, offering her tissues from his desk. "When did you last have help? Real help?" "When my mother was alive, 7 years ago." 7 years. She had been 17 when she became responsible for her sick sister. Younger than Lucy was now. "What happened to your parents?" "My father left when I was 12 and Lucy was 5. Mom worked 2 jobs trying to support us, but she got pneumonia when I was 17. She died because we couldn't afford proper treatment. Maggie wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders. I won't let that happen to Lucy. Nathaniel felt something shift in his chest, a strange combination of admiration and protectiveness. You won't have to. Not anymore. Maggie's first day as Dr. Nathaniel Brooks's assistant began at 7 a.m. sharp. She arrived 15 minutes early, standing outside the hospital entrance in her best outfit, a simple black dress she had bought at a thrift store and carefully mended where the seam had torn. Lucy had already been admitted to a private room on the pediatric ward, surrounded by more medical attention than she had received in years. When Maggie hugged Nathaniel in gratitude, he froze, unaccustomed to such genuine, unguarded emotion. But after a moment he hugged her back, and something warm settled in his chest. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "You've given us our lives back." The first few weeks were a learning curve. Maggie approached every task with fierce determination, staying late to master the computer system, taking detailed notes on hospital protocols, memorizing the names and preferences of regular patients. Nathaniel found himself looking forward to their daily interactions more than he cared to admit. There was something refreshing about Maggie's directness, her complete lack of pretense. When she smiled, really smiled, not the polite mask she wore for difficult patients, it transformed her entire face. "You've never been to a real restaurant, have you?" he asked one afternoon after watching her eat a vending machine sandwich at her desk for the third day in a row. Maggie looked up from the appointment book she was organizing. Define real restaurant. Somewhere that doesn't have a drive-through window. She considered this. "There was a diner my mom took us to once for Lucy's birthday. Does that count?" Nathaniel stood up, grabbing his jacket. "We're going to lunch." "I can't leave. What if someone calls? What if—" "Maggie, you've been here since 6:30 this morning and you haven't taken a break. We're going to lunch." The restaurant Nathaniel chose was elegant, but not intimidating. White tablecloths and soft music, but not so formal that Maggie would feel uncomfortable. He watched her study the menu with the same focused attention she brought to everything else. "I don't know what half of these words mean," she admitted. "What do you like? Chicken, fish, pasta?" "I like everything. I'm not picky when you're used to eating whatever's cheapest." Something about the casual way she said it made Nathaniel's chest tighten. He ordered for both of them, then found himself studying her face as she looked around the restaurant, taking in details with obvious fascination. "You don't have to do this," she said suddenly. "Do what?" "Take care of me. I mean, you already gave me the job and Lucy's getting treatment. You don't owe me fancy lunches, too. Maybe I'm not doing it because I owe you anything." Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted between them. Maggie was the first to look away, but not before Nathaniel caught a glimpse of vulnerability beneath her careful composure. Over the following weeks, their lunch outings became regular. Nathaniel taught her about wine, about different cuisines, about how to navigate formal dining etiquette. But more than that, he found himself sharing things he had never told anyone. His loneliness despite his wealth, his sense that his life lacked real purpose, his recent breakup with Rebecca. "She sounds awful," Maggie said one afternoon after he described Rebecca's latest attempt to win him back. "She's not awful, she's just empty. Everything about her is performance." "Why did you date her for 4 years?" Nathaniel considered the question seriously. "Because it was easy. She was beautiful, from the right family, fit perfectly into my world. I never had to think about whether we were compatible." "And now?" "Now I think compatibility might be more important than I realized." The turning point came on a Saturday when Nathaniel surprised Maggie with tickets to the local amusement park. "I've never been to one," she confessed, as they walked through the entrance gates. "Never, not even as a kid. My dad left when I was 12, and after that there wasn't money for things like amusement parks." Nathaniel felt a familiar pang of guilt about his privileged upbringing, but Maggie's excitement as she took in the colorful rides and carnival games quickly distracted him. She approached each attraction with the same intense focus she brought to everything else, determined to experience it fully. On the Ferris wheel, when their car stopped at the very top, Maggie gripped the safety bar and looked out over the city sprawling below them. "It's beautiful," she said softly. I can see our neighborhood from here, and the hospital. Nathaniel wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her, the way the late afternoon light caught in her dark hair, the genuine wonder on her face, the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. "Maggie," he said quietly. She turned to him, and suddenly they were very close in the small car, her green eyes searching his face. The Ferris wheel creaked gently in the breeze, but neither of them moved. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this, for giving me a chance to feel young." "You are young. You're 24. Sometimes I feel like I skipped from 12 to 30. I never got to be a teenager, never got to be irresponsible or silly or—" "Happy?" he finished softly. "Happy," she agreed. That's when he kissed her. Soft and gentle, with the city spread out below them and the sun setting behind the mountains. When they broke apart, Maggie touched her lips in wonder. "I've never," she started, then stopped. "Never what?" "Never been kissed by someone who saw me, really saw me." Nathaniel cupped her face in his hands, marveling at how right this felt. "I see you, Maggie. I see how strong you are, how selfless, how beautiful. I see all of you." As the Ferris wheel began its descent, Nathaniel realized he was completely, irrevocably in love with his assistant. And for the first time in his life, that love felt like purpose. 3 months into their relationship, Nathaniel was happier than he had ever been. Maggie had blossomed under his care. She had gained weight, her exhaustion had faded, and she laughed more easily. Lucy was responding well to treatment and would soon be strong enough to return home. Everything seemed perfect. That's when Rebecca decided to make her return. "I need to speak with Dr. Brooks," the familiar voice demanded at the reception desk. Maggie looked up from the appointment book to see a tall, blonde woman in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Even without introduction, she knew exactly who this was. "He's with a patient," Maggie replied politely. "Would you like to schedule an appointment?"
Rebecca's cold blue eyes swept over Maggie dismissively, taking in her simple blouse and modest skirt. "I don't need an appointment. Tell Nath that Rebecca's here."
"I'm sorry, but Dr. Brooks is busy, and I don't interrupt patient consultations except for emergencies." "Don't you know who I am?" Rebecca's voice rose, drawing attention from other patients in the waiting area. "I assume you're Rebecca," Maggie said calmly, though her heart was racing. Rebecca laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "So, you're the little charity case everyone's talking about. I heard Nath's standards had dropped, but this is—" She shook her head in mock sympathy. "Honey, you're not even in the same league." Maggie felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice steady. "I'll tell Dr. Brooks you stopped by." "Oh, you'll do more than that," Rebecca said, settling into one of the waiting room chairs. "I'll wait right here until he's free. We have a lot to catch up on." When Nathaniel emerged from his consultation 20 minutes later and saw Rebecca, his face went carefully blank. "What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet someone you loved for 4 years?" Rebecca stood gracefully, every movement calculated for maximum impact. "I was hoping we could talk, privately." Nathaniel glanced at Maggie, who was determinedly focusing on her computer screen, pretending not to listen. 5 minutes, he said curtly, leading Rebecca into his office. Through the closed door, Maggie could hear raised voices but couldn't make out words. Other patients came and went, but the muffled argument continued. When Rebecca finally emerged 30 minutes later, her perfect composure was slightly cracked. "This isn't over, Nath," she called back toward the office. Then she turned to Maggie with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. Men like Nathaniel always come back to where they belong." That evening, Nathaniel was quiet during dinner. They were at their usual restaurant, but he seemed distracted, picking at his food instead of eating. "She's very beautiful," Maggie said finally. Nathaniel looked up sharply. "What?" "Rebecca. She's everything I'm not. Tall, blonde, sophisticated. I can see why you were with her for 4 years." "Maggie, I've been thinking," she continued, her voice carefully controlled, "about how different we are. Your world, my world. Maybe she's right. Maybe—" "Stop." Nathaniel reached across the table to take her hand. "Don't do this.
Don't let her get into your head.
But she's not wrong, is she? Look at us. Maggie gestured between them. You're Dr. Nathaniel Brooks, heir to a hospital empire. I'm a high school dropout who was counting pills to steal medicine for my sister. You weren't stealing? You know what I mean. Maggie pulled her hand away. We come from completely different worlds, Nath. What happens when you get tired of playing savior? When the novelty wears off? The question hit too close to fears Nathaniel hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Not about getting tired of Maggie, but about whether she would ever truly believe he loved her for herself, not out of pity or guilt. Is that what you think this is? He asked quietly. A game? Charity? I don't know what to think anymore. They finished dinner in tense silence, and that night, for the first time in weeks, Maggie went home to her own apartment instead of staying at Nathaniel's penthouse. 2 days later, Rebecca returned to the hospital, this time with an agenda and an accomplice. She had spent those days working on Nurse Patricia, appealing to the woman's sense of propriety and class consciousness. It's not personal, she told Patricia over expensive cocktails. But surely you can see how inappropriate this relationship is? A doctor and his uneducated assistant? It reflects poorly on the entire hospital. Patricia, who had never liked Maggie's rapid promotion and had always harbored a secret crush on Dr. Brooks, was easily swayed. What do you want me to do? She asked. Just help me prove what she really is, Rebecca said, slipping an expensive diamond bracelet off her wrist. I think our little Maggie might be more opportunistic than she appears. I brought you something, she announced loudly, producing an expensive gift box. A peace offering. I want us to be friends. Inside was a silk scarf that probably cost more than Maggie made in a week. I can't accept this, Maggie protested. Of course you can. Consider it a welcome to the family gift. Rebecca smiled sweetly while slipping the diamond bracelet into Maggie's purse, which sat open beside her desk. Later, after Rebecca had made a grand show of leaving, she returned with theatrical panic. My bracelet, she exclaimed to anyone who would listen. My grandmother's diamond bracelet, it's gone. I know I had it when I came in. Nurse Patricia was quick to suggest searching the area. Maybe it fell off somewhere, she said with false concern. Or maybe someone took it, Rebecca said, her eyes fixed meaningfully on Maggie. Within minutes, Mrs. Brooks, Nathaniel's mother, arrived, summoned by Rebecca's frantic phone call. Eleanor Brooks was a formidable woman who had never approved of her son's relationship with his little assistant. Really, Rebecca, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I hope so, Rebecca replied, but perhaps we should check everyone's belongings, just to be thorough. That's completely unnecessary, Nathaniel said firmly, having been pulled from his patient by the commotion. No one here would— If everyone's innocent, then no one should object, his mother interjected coolly. Unless someone has something to hide. Maggie, who had been watching this performance with growing alarm, stood up straight. I have nothing to hide. You can search my purse. Maggie, don't, Nathaniel said quickly. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. But his mother was already reaching for the purse. If she's innocent, then this will clear everything up, won't it? The bracelet glittered like an accusation as it tumbled from Maggie's purse onto the desk. The waiting room fell silent. Maggie stared at the jewelry in complete shock. I never, she stammered. Well, Rebecca said, her mask slipping for just a moment before returning to false sympathy. Maybe we should call the police. I mean, theft is theft, right? Enough, Nathaniel said sharply, his protective instincts finally kicking in. Rebecca, mother, I think you both should leave. Now. But Nath, Rebecca started. I said now. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in life or death situations. Take your bracelet and go. Rebecca snatched the bracelet from the desk, her satisfied smile barely concealed. Of course. I got what I came for. She swept out, followed reluctantly by Mrs. Brooks, who shot Maggie one last disapproving look. The waiting room gradually returned to normal, patients and staff pretending they hadn't witnessed the spectacle. Nathaniel turned to Maggie, who stood frozen by her desk, tears threatening to spill. "My office," he said quietly. "Please." Maggie followed him on shaking legs, her mind reeling. How had that bracelet gotten in her purse? She had never even touched it, never even looked at it closely. Once the door closed behind them, Nathaniel ran his hands through his hair, clearly struggling with what to say. "Maggie," he began carefully, "if you needed something, anything, you know you could have asked me, right?" The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "I could have bought you a bracelet just like that one. Or if you needed money for something, anything at all, I would have given you whatever you needed." His voice was gentle, but the implication was devastating. "You don't have to take things from people." Maggie felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The man she loved, the man she thought knew her, was standing there calmly assuming she was a thief. Worse, he was offering to buy her things, as if that would solve her moral failings. "You think I took it?" she whispered. "I think—" Nathaniel struggled, knowing Maggie would never steal, but unable to explain the evidence. "I think maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe you picked it up without realizing. I didn't take anything." The words came out strangled. "I didn't even touch that bracelet. I don't know how it got in my purse." "But Maggie, it was right there, inside your bag. How else could it have—" "So that's it?" Tears were flowing freely now. "Just like that? Because I'm poor and didn't finish high school, I must be a thief?" "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." Her voice broke. "You're offering to buy me jewelry so I won't steal from your friends. Do you hear yourself?" Nathaniel felt something cold settle in his stomach as he realized how his words sounded. But the bracelet had been in her purse. How could he ignore that? Even as he thought it, a voice in the back of his mind whispered that he knew Rebecca, knew how manipulative she could be, how far she would go to get what she wanted, but without proof. "I'm trying to understand," he started. "No, you're not." Maggie wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders with the dignity that had first attracted him to her. "You've already decided. Just like everyone else in my life, you think the worst of me the moment it's convenient." "Maggie, please, let's just calm down and—" "You know what the worst part is?" she interrupted, her voice eerily calm now. "I was starting to believe I deserved better. That maybe I wasn't just the poor girl from the wrong side of town who had to be grateful for scraps. But you just reminded me exactly what I am to people like you." "What do you mean?" "A charity case. A project. Someone you could save to make yourself feel good." She moved toward the door. "Thank you for the lesson, Dr. Brooks. It's one I won't forget." "Maggie, don't go, please. I know you would never—" But she was already opening the door. "Yes, you do know. And that's what makes this so much worse." As the door closed behind her, Nathaniel sank into his chair, his mind racing. He did know Maggie would never steal. He knew her character, her integrity, her pride. But the bracelet had been right there in her purse. Unless— His blood ran cold as he thought about Rebecca's satisfied smile, her years of manipulation, her comment about calling the police. She had planned this. Somehow she had set Maggie up, and he had played right into her hands. But by the time realization fully dawned, it was too late. Maggie was gone, and his words, his terrible, thoughtless words about buying her things, hung in the air like poison. He had just lost the woman he loved because he had chosen evidence over faith, suspicion over trust. And the worst part was, deep down, he had known better. Maggie didn't return to work the next day, or the day after that. When Nathaniel called her apartment, there was no answer. When he drove to her building, the elderly neighbor, Mrs. Steve, told him politely but firmly that Maggie didn't want to see him. "She's working at that diner on 5th Street, Mrs. Steve finally revealed after a week of his persistent visits. "But she's different now. Broken. Whatever you did to that girl, you need to fix it." Lucy, thankfully, was healthy enough to return home, though she asked repeatedly why Dr. Brooks didn't visit anymore. "He's busy," Maggie would say, forcing brightness into her voice. "Important doctors have important things to do." But late at night, When Lucy was asleep, Maggie would lie awake replaying that horrible moment in the hospital. The doubt in Nathaniel's eyes. The way he had assumed the worst of her, just like everyone else in her life. She had been foolish to think someone like him could love someone like her. Rebecca had been right. They belonged in different worlds. Nathaniel, meanwhile, was discovering what life felt like without Maggie. His penthouse felt cold and empty. Food had no taste. Patients noticed his distraction. Work, which had always been his refuge, felt pointless. Rebecca tried to capitalize on their breakup, appearing at his office with dinner invitations and concerned phone calls. But her presence only reminded him of what he had lost. "I can't believe you're moping over that little gold digger," she said, after he declined her third dinner invitation. "Don't call her that." "Oh, please, Nath. The bracelet was literally in her purse." "I know, Maggie. She wouldn't—" He stopped, something in Rebecca's tone catching his attention. "How do you know the bracelet was in her purse? I never told you exactly what happened." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. Well, your mother mentioned—" "My mother wasn't there when we found it. Only you, Patricia, and I were." Understanding dawned slowly, followed by a rage so pure it made his hands shake. "You put it there, you set her up." "Don't be ridiculous." "You put the bracelet in her purse while you were sitting on her desk." Nathaniel's voice was deadly quiet. "How could you be so cruel?" Rebecca's mask finally slipped. "She didn't belong with you. Anyone could see that. I was saving you from making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you." Nathaniel reached for his phone. "Get out of my office. Get out of my hospital. If I see you again, I'm calling security." "You can't throw away 4 years for some charity case. Get out!" The answer came to him at 3 a.m. on a sleepless Wednesday night, 3 weeks after he had lost her. Maggie woke to someone knocking persistently on her apartment door. She glanced at the clock, 2:47 a.m. Lucy stirred in her bed but didn't wake. The knocking continued, soft but insistent. "Maggie, please, I know you're awake." Nathaniel's voice made her chest ache. She had been dreaming about him again, dreams where he believed her, where he chose her, where they were happy. "Go away," she called softly, not wanting to wake Lucy. Despite herself, Maggie found herself walking to the door. "It's almost 3 in the morning." "I know. I've been out here for an hour, trying to get the courage to knock." Maggie pressed her forehead against the door. Through the thin wood, she could almost feel his presence. "Please." His voice was raw with exhaustion and desperation. "Just let me explain. Let me tell you what I found out." Against her better judgment, Maggie unlocked the door. Nathaniel stood in the hallway in wrinkled clothes, his usually perfect hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked as broken as she felt. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel terrible. Maggie, Rebecca set you up. She planted that bracelet in your purse." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "She planned the whole thing with Nurse Patricia. She wanted to break us up, and God, Maggie, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never—" "How do you know?" Maggie interrupted, needing to hear the whole truth. "She slipped up, said something she couldn't have known unless she planted it. When I confronted her, she confessed. She said she was saving me from making a mistake." Maggie sank against the doorframe, all the fight draining out of her. "So you believe me now? Now that you have proof?" The question was like a knife through his heart. "I always believed you deep down. But the evidence was more convincing than knowing me?" Nathaniel stepped closer, his gray eyes desperate. "I was confused, overwhelmed. I should have trusted my heart instead of my head." "Your heart?" Maggie laughed bitterly. "Your heart was never in this, Nathaniel. This was always about charity, about you feeling good about saving the poor girl." "That's not true. Then why didn't you fight for me? When everyone was calling me a thief, why didn't you defend me?" "I did." "No, you didn't. You hesitated. You doubted. And that's all I needed to know about how you really feel about me." Nathaniel ran his hands through his hair, searching for words that could bridge the gap between them. "I was scared, okay? I was scared, Because I love you so much, it terrifies me. And I couldn't understand how someone like you could love someone like me. Someone like me? Someone real. Someone brave and selfless and beautiful inside and out. Someone who works 3 jobs to save her sister. Someone who turns spare change into miracles. His voice broke slightly. I've never done anything that mattered, Maggie. I've lived in a bubble my whole life, never had to sacrifice anything or fight for anything. You make me want to be better than I am. Tears were streaming down Maggie's face now. That's not who I am. I'm just tired and scared and trying to survive. No, you're extraordinary. And I was an idiot to let doubt creep in even for a second. They stood in the narrow hallway, years of pain and weeks of separation between them. What about Rebecca? Maggie asked finally. I had her banned from the hospital, and I may have made a few phone calls to modeling agencies and social clubs around town. Her reputation is damaged. You destroyed her career? She tried to destroy your life. She got off easy. Despite everything, Maggie felt a small smile tug at her lips. That seems harsh. Not harsh enough. Nathaniel stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, close enough to see the stubble on his jaw. Maggie, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I failed you when you needed me most. But I love you, and if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. How? The word was barely a whisper. Marry me. Maggie's breath caught. What? I know it's crazy, and I know it's too soon, but I can't lose you again. I want to take care of you and Lucy forever. I want to build a life together, a real life. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. I bought this 3 weeks ago, before everything went wrong. I've been carrying it around, hoping I'd get the chance to give it to you. The ring was simple and elegant, a single diamond that caught the hallway light and threw tiny rainbows on the walls. Nathaniel, you don't have to answer now, just think about it. I'll wait as long as you need. Maggie looked at this man who had found her counting stolen medications and seen potential instead of pathology, who had given her a job when no one else would hire her, who had taught her about wine and fancy restaurants and what it felt like to be cherished, who had also doubted her when she needed his faith most. I need time, she said finally. Of course, I'll wait. He pressed the ring box into her hands. Just, please don't give up on us. Please don't give up on me. After he left, Maggie sat on her narrow bed, staring at the ring box in her hands. Lucy stirred and opened her eyes. Was that Dr. Brooks? She asked sleepily. Yes. Are you going to forgive him? Maggie looked at her 17-year-old sister, who had grown wise beyond her years through their shared struggles. I don't know. He hurt me, Lucy. He doubted me when I needed him to believe in me. But he came back. He found out the truth, and he came back. Lucy struggled to sit up, still weak, but so much better than she had been months ago. Maggie, you've spent your whole life taking care of me, protecting me, sacrificing for me. When do you get to be happy? I am happy. We're together. You're healthy. That's not the same thing. Lucy reached for her sister's hand. I saw how you were with him. For the first time since Mom died, you looked like yourself again. Like the sister I remember from when we were kids. Tears threatened again. What if he hurts me again? What if he doesn't? What if this is your chance at the life you gave up for me? 2 days later, Nurse Patricia couldn't live with her guilt anymore. The weight of what she had helped Rebecca do was eating at her, especially seeing how devastated Dr. Brooks looked every day. She found Maggie at the diner on 5th Street during the lunch rush, wiping down tables with the same focused efficiency she had brought to hospital work. Maggie, could I speak with you for a moment? Maggie looked up, surprised to see the nurse who had never liked her. I'm working. Please, it's about what happened at the hospital. They stepped outside into the alley behind the diner, where Patricia broke down completely. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. Rebecca convinced me to help her. She said you were using Dr. Brooks, that you didn't belong there. I was jealous of how quickly you were promoted, how much he cared about you. So when she asked me to distract everyone while I thought she was protecting him. Maggie listened in silence as Patricia confessed the entire plot. "I've been working at that hospital for 15 years and I've never done anything so cruel. Dr. Brooks has been miserable without you. We all have. You brought something good to that place and I helped destroy it. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't live with what I did. And because he loves you. Really loves you. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Patricia wiped her eyes. "I quit my job yesterday. I can't face him anymore knowing what I did." That evening, Maggie found herself standing outside the hospital where everything had started. Through the windows, she could see the familiar hustle of evening shift change. Somewhere in there, Nathaniel was probably working late, throwing himself into patient care the way he always did when he was troubled. She thought about everything that had happened, how he had followed her home out of suspicion and found compassion instead. How he had offered her not just a job, but a chance at dignity. How he had taught her that she deserved more than survival. How he had failed her when she needed him most, but also how he had fought to make it right. The ring box felt warm in her coat pocket. Nathaniel was reviewing patient charts at 11 p.m. when his office door opened quietly. He looked up to see Maggie standing there, still in her diner uniform, looking uncertain but determined. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." He set down his pen, hardly daring to breathe. "How did you get in? Security usually—" "I still have my ID badge. Old habits." She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "We need to talk." "Of course. Anything." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, but she remained standing. "Patricia came to see me. She told me everything, how Rebecca planned it, how she helped distract everyone while the bracelet was planted." Maggie's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. She quit her job over the guilt. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "I should have fired her myself." "No, she did the right thing in the end. It took courage to confess." They looked at each other across the room. 7 months of history, and 3 weeks of pain between them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Maggie continued. "About being scared. About not believing someone like me could love someone like you." "Maggie, let me finish." She pulled the ring box from her pocket, setting it carefully on his desk. "I've been scared too. Scared that this was all too good to be true, that eventually you'd see what everyone else sees. A high school dropout from the wrong side of town who doesn't belong in your world. That's not what I see when I look at you. I know that now. But I let Rebecca get into my head because part of me believed her. Part of me thought I wasn't good enough for you." Nathaniel stood up, moving around the desk toward her. "You're too good for me. You always have been." "That's not true either." Maggie smiled through the tears gathering in her eyes. "We're just two people who found each other and fell in love. Everything else is just noise." "So what are you saying?" Instead of answering with words, Maggie reached for the ring box, opening it to reveal the simple, elegant diamond. "I'm saying yes. Yes to the job, if you'll have me back. Yes to the life. Yes to you." Nathaniel's hands shook as he took the ring from the box. "Are you sure? I know I hurt you." "We hurt each other, but we found our way back." She held out her left hand. "That's what people who love each other do." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, catching the office lights and throwing tiny rainbows across the medical diplomas on the wall. When Nathaniel kissed her, it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. The wedding was small and perfect, held in the hospital chapel where they had both found their purpose. Lucy served as maid of honor, healthy and glowing, having been accepted to the state university with a full scholarship, funded by an anonymous donor who happened to be her new brother-in-law. Mrs. Steve brought her 3 cats as unofficial wedding guests, and even Nurse Patricia returned to witness the ceremony, having found new work at a community clinic where she spent her time making amends by serving patients who needed advocates. Rebecca had indeed been forced to move to a small town in another state, her modeling career and social standing ruined by her own vindictive actions. But Nathaniel and Maggie rarely thought about her anymore. "Do you ever regret it?" Maggie asked one evening as they sat in their new home. Not the sterile penthouse, but a warm house with a garden where Lucy could visit on weekends and holidays. Marrying the girl who used to fake symptoms to steal medicine. Nathaniel looked up from the veterinary school applications Maggie was reviewing. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian finally within reach, now that she had the time and resources to pursue education. "I regret that it took me so long to follow you home," he said, pulling her close. "I regret doubting you, even for a moment. But marrying you? That's the best decision I ever made." Outside, Lucy's laughter drifted through the windows as she played with the rescue dogs Maggie had insisted on adopting. Mrs. Steve's voice could be heard calling her cats for dinner from the guest house they had built for her in the backyard. It was chaotic and loud and nothing like the pristine, lonely life Nathaniel had lived before. It was everything he had never known he wanted. "I love you, Mrs. Brooks," he whispered against her hair. "I love you too, Dr. Brooks," she whispered back. And in that moment, surrounded by the family they had created from the ashes of their separate tragedies, they both knew they were exactly where they belonged. The poor patient had taught the rich doctor the most valuable lesson of all. That love isn't about what you can give someone, but about who you become when you choose to build a life together. And sometimes, the best prescriptions can't be found in any medical textbook. They're found in the courage to follow someone home and discover what you never expected to find there. Home.